Okay, so what this little video is about is just basic knife skills. So in hospitality, it's very important that you learn how to grip your knife properly and how to grip your food properly as well as cut food properly. And the reason why we need to know how to hold our knife properly and correctly is because you're spending a lot of time chopping. Now what will happen is that if you're not holding your knife properly, your wrist is going to get sore, your hand will get sore and your fingers will start to cramp up. So it is very important and vital that you learn how to hold your knife properly. So just a few basic knife skills. First of all, we have two knives that we use in our kitchen. Obviously there are a lot more knives, but the two basic ones that you will need to know are this knife, which is our cook's knife, and this is the one that you will use most often. Now the cook's knife is essentially a multi-purpose or an all-purpose knife, so a knife that you can use for a number of things. Now our little one is what we call the paring knife. Now we use the paring knife for generally chopping fruits and vegetables, and what it does is because it's a smaller blade and it's a smaller knife, it just gives us a little bit more control over the food that we're handling. So first of all, with our knife, really important, a lot of people will pick up a knife and hold it just as a basic grip like this. It's really important though, because we need to hold our blade in place, that you put your fingers all the way up to this little part on the knife here, and you wrap your finger around the blade of the knife, obviously so your finger's not underneath the blade because you're going to slice through your finger, but essentially you want your finger there to be able to hold the knife, okay? Now these knives can be a little bit difficult because the handle is quite long, but essentially that's what you're wanting to do. You're wanting to hold your blade in place with the side of your finger. Now when you're chopping, it's really important that we curl our fingers. So when we have our hands on the board, our hands are gonna look a little bit like this. We're just gonna curl the tips of our fingers underneath as well as our thumb. So essentially, your hand grip should look like this on the board. It's going to look like a spider that's alive, okay? So the way that I explain it is that you don't want dead spiders. If you've got your hand on your board like this, it's going to look like a dead spider. We want our spiders to be alive and living. So we're going to curl our fingers, and the reason why we do this is because we want the blade of the knife to rest against this part of our hand, so between the two knuckles when you're cutting. So if we are cutting, obviously you use your hand to guide the food and guide the blade of the knife, and it's just going to help keep that nice smooth rocking motion on your board. Now when you're holding your knife and when you're cutting, what I've seen happen a number of times is that our blades, it's the way we stand. When you're standing, you've kind of got to stand with your blade between your two shoulder blades or your two shoulders. And the reason for this is often when we stand and we cut through things, we cut on a slight diagonal. Now we want to be getting the blade straight through at a 90-degree angle. So when you're cutting, you need to stand over your blade and make sure that blade is at 90 degrees to your food. Against your hand, making sure your thumb's curled in underneath, and you're just going to cut with a rocking motion. So to do this, the tip of your blade stays on the board, and essentially it's just a rocking motion of the wrist and the shoulder, and you're just going to bring the blade up to cut through the food. So we're just going to have a rocking motion like this. So remember, a live spider needs to curl your fingers under. Your thumb needs to be tucked under as well because we don't want to cut it off on the way through. And we're just going to have this rocking motion against our fingers. And that is a basic knife skills, basic way to hold your knife and the basic way to cut.